Tonight on First Issues, we continue our discussion on traffic congestion from our previous program. And in the second segment, profile the local enterprise authority, LEA, on what their efforts have brought forth in terms of improving the business landscape in Botswana. Last week, we took a look at the reasons behind the heavy congestion we see at different times of the day on the streets of our capital city. Our featured guests, the Mayor of Gaborone, Mr. Haskins Nkaigwa, as well as Chartered Architect and Urban Designer, Mr. Lekwalo Letamusianyane, listed notable contributing factors to this problem. The Mayor noted our culture of revering car ownership as almost a rite of passage, and both guests attributed the congestion on our roads to weaknesses in the way in which the infrastructure development of our cities, including the maintenance and development of our roads and parking spaces, is financed. We now take a look at possible remedies to the problem we have outlined, with experts in the field debating the feasibility of these inventive solutions to the issue of traffic congestion in the city of Gaborone. Welcome to First Issues. Having insisted that the congestion is indeed a concern for his office, we asked Mayor Nkaigwa what measures have been put in motion to alleviate the situation as it stands.
What we have done in regard to the bylaw, the paid parking meters, we consult the community at Toropo Gaborone. But from our consultations, really we need that for the city. We are looking in a period of the next 2 or 3 months, we effective the parking lot. We are not going to be steep in terms of a start, but we are not going to be doing it in the Gaborone City Council. We are going to be giving to the private sector to do it, because but we do have the land. Our land will speak for us, and then the private sector will bring the investment in terms of the capital, the finance, to ensure that indeed they develop the parking lots in some of our open spaces. Because open spaces, you cannot just take your car or park more in open space. Urban
designer Mr. Musianyane had interesting ideas as to how to approach the issue of traffic congestion, having previously illustrated that Gaborone was mapped out as a suburb, thus the prevalence of crescents and cul-de-sacs prohibiting the flow of traffic.
There are lots of solutions. We have to re-engineer our town. It's very, very possible to open those cul-de-sacs. It's very open to realign our roads. A city is a living thing. It's very, very easy to go into the centers of town and re-engineer them, recreate the spaces and so on. You know, people in a city flow like water, but these flows are directed. For instance, you could actually decide that we have a university over there, and you know there will be a flow of people towards the university. You have a stadium over there. You know there will be a flow of people towards the stadium, towards certain what we call activity nodes. You create these activity nodes deliberately, and you make sure that you facilitate transportation between the activity nodes, transport between the activity nodes within a city. So you can be assured that the bulk of the transportation and the bulk of the movement of the people is catered for. And this can be done. Gaborone has not lost it. We can still create those theaters. We can strengthen our nodes like your stadiums, your entertainment areas. Government enclave it's an activity node. It's a node itself, but it needs to be strengthened. I mean, there's no parking in the government enclave. Just one small thing. You improve the parking, you sort out the parking, you create beautiful and working gardens in the government enclave, shades, walking streets within the government enclaves. It becomes a real working node. But then you have to strengthen the linkage between that node called government enclave with other nodes, and deliberately do that and make sure that that works.
Speaking of solutions, are there only construction-related solutions that we can have address this congestion problem that we see?
At the root of it, whatever decisions are made, a lot of it would have to be re-engineering. Re-engineering is not about construction only. You can deliberately create nodes that are not necessarily construction. You have to place facilities of interest in certain areas to direct people into those areas. That does not necessarily mean that there's construction. For instance, the University of Botswana exists already. What does it do? It's a place of learning, but you could actually introduce other activities at the university to draw a lot of people in that direction. It doesn't take construction, but immediately you do that, you have to make sure that there is parking, you have to make sure that there are routes that link it with where the other people will be coming from. And that applies to all the nodes that I'm talking about.
One of the characteristics maybe unique to Botswana and Gaborone in particular is that we have a high density of cars.
Indeed, I mean, the ratio of people to cars in Gaborone is very, very high. And that is because we do not have a public transport system. The operative word here is system. You have lots of taxis around, but they are not systematized. There's no system that belongs, and majority of the times, when you have a proper public transport system, it belongs to the city council. It does not mean that the city council runs it, but it says the city council is responsible for providing that. And the city council could, in joint venture or in some cases, farm it out to the private sector to actually run that system. But it must be a proper system where you could calculate from any point in Gaborone, it will take you so much time to reach the center of town. If our people have got to habituate into being time conscious, they have to live in an environment where somebody can say, I'm at Kale News and I'll be in town in 10 minutes or in 5 minutes. Because there's a transport system, they can estimate how long it takes to go to town. But until we have such a system, we are not time conscious. We cannot be time conscious. We cannot develop a culture of time consciousness. We do not have a transport system. What we have is very sporadic, inadequate. The city council does not own it. And I'm saying we need to have a system where the city council is accountable for the provision of such. And once the system is in place, then people will use the transport system.
The idea of having a well-run, timely and effective public transport system to alleviate the problem of traffic congestion is one to take note of. Our urban planning expert insists that the nearly 3,000 combis and 500 taxis operating in Gaborone alone are not to be taken into account. We now ask both our guests why it is that we do not have one at this point in time. What has hindered the implementation of an effective public transport system?
I did indicate that when Gaborone started, it started as a suburb. And we thought we would remain to be a suburb forever because we wouldn't be more than 14,000 people. We are slowly waking up to the fact that we are now approaching 300,000. And that means we have to provide certain amenities that we could in the past say they were luxuries. It's not a luxury to provide a transport system. Otherwise, we'll come to a standstill and the city will become untenable. I talked about Lagos, I talked about Dar es Salaam, Dodoma, and Abuja. This is because people did not put in place measures that would ensure that we continue to be a sustainable city from a point of view of being efficient in terms of moving around town. Now, it is not too late. It can be done. All it requires is the city council must commit to providing a transport system, a public transport system. And there are so many methods and examples around the world, and Gaborone is not impossible. It can be done.
One of the things that we should take into consideration is that when government plans, it doesn't happen there and there. It is always on the long term. Of course, yes, government has a plan to try and ensure that indeed they address their normality or this, the challenges that we currently find ourselves in the city in terms of the traffic congestion, in terms of the public transport system. But now, I wouldn't believe that that will be the only solution for us. I think it's all about Rona, Gaborone, or you find that most of us, ne reeletsa gore ga o simolola go berekela o ka reka koloi koloi ela mabono e turu e le sone se ka o sa gore tota wa bereka o dira madi.
I think the argument is that if our transport system was reliable, one you could set your clock by, more people would be inclined to leave their own cars at home, yes. Save on gas, yes. Save on servicing and all of that.
Yes. Yes.
So is it something that you as the Gaborone City Council have considered?
No, it is true. Yes, a public transport system will work for the city of Gaborone. But what I'm saying is that really, if you start a public transport system now, without educating the people on the need to use a public transport system, people still continue to use the Mercedes-Benz, the Range Rovers, the Land Rovers, because really there is a social status in this country attached to driving a motor vehicle or attached to ownership of a motor vehicle as opposed to ownership of a house.
But dissuading the use of private cars, is that really going to be effective? I feel people are forced to own their own cars for you to be fully productive and get around town from point A and point B and make those meetings and those deadlines. You need a car because we don't have a fully functioning public transport system. Yes. So now if we're also making it more difficult to own this car, isn't that just going to aggravate the situation?
I wouldn't believe so. Because when you look at the situation, what we have done, like initially when I said it, Ghana, you'll find that in a household, you find that each and every household, is 4, each and every household on average. We tell going to the same place, but now, when you come with such kind of measures, what you are saying is that you are actually limiting the number of cars that will be on the roads each and every time.
Mr. Musianyane warned that the relocation of a capital city or commercial center is a costly and undesirable last option. Relocations previously witnessed in countries like Brazil, when Brasilia was planned and built in 1961 to relieve a very overcrowded Rio de Janeiro, a measure that has also been witnessed in Africa in countries like Nigeria and Tanzania. How far are we from having to consider such an extreme solution?
Let me say this. It is not a good thing to emigrate rather, from the city to go and establish a new town altogether. Because the question is, at what expense to the existing city are you doing that? We must find solutions to cities. The Romans never moved out of Rome. They still live in Rome. We were watching the Vatican just recently, and it has always been there. Look at cities like Jerusalem. They've always been there since biblical times, and they've not moved. They are monuments of time and culture. They are evidence of time. That's what people were doing at specific times. They're standing. What are you doing to your own heritage when you walk away from your town? You don't do that. You look for solutions to make those cities work, and there are solutions. There are towns where, let's take Johannesburg, when the center of the core of Johannesburg moved to Sandton and beyond. That happened for the reasons that we are talking about. But there is a major move to move back to Johannesburg. New York, Washington, D.C. Look at Chicago. I mean, in the 60s, there were no-go zones in New York in the 60s. In fact, even as recently as early 80s. Now, you can go anywhere in the Bronx, anywhere in New York. It's most beautiful. There has been movements to go back because the investments that were made in the center of these towns, like in the center of Johannesburg, it's compelling to go back and to go and make sure that those monuments that were created as a celebration to man's success had to actually be reinvigorated.
We hope you enjoyed traveling down the rabbit hole we unearthed after a simple questioning of our parking situation. In the next segment, we take a look at another factor in our national growth and development, and that is the nurturing of small businesses and the fostering of an entrepreneurial culture. Welcome back to First Issues. Many up-and-coming entrepreneurs and even members of the general public still struggle to separate the function of Leah from that of places similar to it, such as Cedar and the Business Place. And as a result, they lose out on opportunities for business counseling. This evening, First Issues hosts Deputy CEO of Client Services at Leah, Mr. Cosmos Moapari, to get clarification. The first question we asked during a recent visit to his office was for him to help us unpack the mandate of Leah for our viewers.
Leah, being the local enterprise authority, is charged with entrepreneurship and enterprise development in Botswana. Now, our mandate is mainly around, first, if I were to take them one by one, the first one will be assisting businesses in terms of starting up. First, what we do is that we do what we call pre-start interventions, whereby we assist somebody to actually start a business, assist them with a business plan, and then thereafter, we then facilitate access to finance with the likes of Cedar. We do not provide funding. That is the one thing that I think is always confuses a lot of people. When the person has been financed, they also come back to Leah, and then we then mentor and monitor their business. First, we make sure that the funding that they got, they actually use it to start the business. And then when the business has started, we then mentor and monitor them. By mentoring means that we assist the clients to keep their records, to make sure that all that they agreed to do with our business advisors is actually carried on, right up until the business grows and is export ready.
In its 5 years of operation, what would you say the major achievements have been?
Well, our achievements are many. The first is when we started off, there was nothing. We built the infrastructure in the sense that we put the organizational structure in place, and then we set up offices in all the 10 district headquarters in the country, which were 10. And in addition to that, we also established branches in the cities, Gaborone and Francistown, as well as in Silibapikwe. During that process, we also were able to establish 4 business incubators. One is in Francistown, one is in Pilani, 2 are in Gaborone, the old Bedu place, as well as the Glen Valley. During that period, as well, we've been able to assist about 11,000 people have walked through our doors, of which we have screened that 11,000, 8,000 of them have passed. And we've assisted all of those that have passed through with a lot of interventions, mainly basic, as I did highlight, trainings. About 7,000 trainings have been conducted.
In your efforts to further your mandate and see it come to realization, what gives you sleepless nights?
The sleepless nights that we have currently at the moment is, you see, our coverage areas. As I did highlight, we've got about 13 branches countrywide. And there are certain areas whereby they're actually quite big. And if you take the Central District, for argument's sake, we only have a branch in Suruwe. And it covers all the way right up to Letlakane and down to areas like Bomahalape. So you can imagine our business advisors in those areas actually have to travel long distances.
Having heard the major hurdles to Leah's operations, we now wondered, what of the future? What does Leah expect to face and achieve in the next 10 years?
We have come up with about 4 projects which we believe that if we are able to succeed in implementing, they will take the country way forward in terms of achieving what is, especially import substitution. Now, these projects are this. There's what we call the leather park. Our intention is to establish a leather park in Lobatse to a tune of about 245 million. We are still working around how we can get funding for that. We're also looking at horticultural production, whereby along the eastern corridor of Botswana, where the dams are, get pieces of land through our collaboration with the Ministry of Agriculture and SEDA, and set up horticultural farms using specific technologies that will enable continuous production of fruits and vegetables in Botswana. We're also looking at another project called Rapid Incubation. Rapid Incubation is where you take out of school youth and then take them through a process whereby they are able to then learn through the use of the machines the various trades or industries that they want to participate in. And then after a period of 3 months, they then can make an informed choice as to whether they want to participate in that industry to become business people, or they want to become employees of those that want to start those businesses.
I am certain that we are all looking forward to seeing the plans outlined here tonight come to pass, and that the business-minded among us can now take full advantage of the services at hand to assist them in their ambitions for the benefit of us all. Stay tuned as we bring you tips for business success with the founder of Small Business Camp, startup expert Andrew Morrison.
The first secret is purpose. What is your purpose? And you help to uncover your purpose by what I tell people to remember your calling. What is your calling? Your calling is something simple. Your calling is to inspire. Your calling is to motivate. Your calling is to organize. Your calling is to make people laugh. By you recognizing what your calling is, then you can connect your business to a cause. So your business is simply a cause. And once you have that calling, the calling now fuels your cause. Don't feel as if you have to start a business to share your calling. Wherever you are is a chance for you to manifest your calling. So my calling is to inspire people, to help people. It's very simple. Wherever I go, in spite of myself, I will always be helping somebody. So start your business process by remembering your calling and always stand centered in your calling. Then you'll never fail.
It is now time for the stock market review, courtesy of the Botswana Stock Exchange.
We are looking at the stock market review in the past week. In the past week, the DCI gained marginal 0.8%, whereas the FCI remained unchanged. On a year-to-date basis, our DCI has gone up by 14.7% in comparison to only 1.3% recorded in the same period in 2012. On a year-to-date basis, our FCI has lost 1% in comparison to only 0.4% gain in the same period in 2012. The turnover recorded for the week amounted to 25.4 million pula, generated from a volume of 7 million shares. This gives us average daily turnover of 4.8 million shares. Average daily turnover is the number of shares traded over a particular period of time on an average basis. So in the past week, you would divide 25.4 million pula with 7 million shares to arrive at an average daily turnover of 6.3 million pula. On a year-to-date basis, our turnover amounted to 355.1 million shares in comparison to only 190.2 million shares in the same period in 2012.